After watching this video, you will understand what perspective is, why it's one of the most important fundamentals of drawing, and how to apply a few simple principles to make your drawings feel more believable. Perspective is a system artists use to create the illusion of depth on a flat surface. In other words, it helps artists to turn a flat sheet of paper into a believable space. Perspective is one of the most important fundamentals of drawing because it helps you create three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface. It allows us to create depth, place objects accurately in space and in relation to one another, and make our drawings feel more believable. The first fundamental observation is that things appear smaller as they move further away. So a car in the distance is not actually smaller than a nearby car, but it appears smaller to our eyes. So distance affects apparent size. The second one is that parallel lines appear to converge in the distance. An example of that is railway tracks, roads, the edges of buildings seem to move toward each other as they recede from us. So parallel lines appear to converge at the vanishing point. The third observation is that the horizon line represents the viewer's eye level. It helps you organize the entire drawing and determine how objects are seen and where they are in space. So the horizon line is always at the viewer's eye level. By now you're probably asking, yeah, but how does all that apply in practice? That's what I'm going to explain next. If you want, grab pencil and paper to draw along with me so you understand it even better. I'm going to use this image as a reference because railway tracks are a classic to explain perspective. I'm going to start by drawing the horizon line because, as you remember that I mentioned previously, the horizon line helps you organize the entire drawing. So the horizon line is here at the viewer's eye level. This is the horizon line. Next, I'm going to mark the vanishing point. And one of the observations that I mentioned before is that parallel lines appear to converge at the vanishing point. And we know that the rails are parallel, but here they appear to converge at the vanishing point. So the vanishing point is here. Now, I know that the rails start here at the corners of the sheet of paper. So what I have to do now is to connect this dot to the vanishing point and this dot to the vanishing point. Now I have the rails converging at the vanishing point. Now I want you to pay attention to these structures that are in between the rails. Pay attention to the distance in between them. We know that they always have the same distance between them, but here the space appears smaller as it recedes in the distance. So here's an example of one of the other main observations that I mentioned before. Distance affects apparent size. Now I'm going to draw them here. I drew them a bit randomly, but there is a specific technique to make the distance between these structures more accurate, but I'll leave that to another video. Now, even though there aren't power poles in the reference, I'm going to draw one just to give you an example. Let's say that we have a power pole here that goes up until here. Now I have to connect this dot to the vanishing point, and this dot to the vanishing point. And now I know the exact height of the other power poles that have the same height. So this is a very quick example of what I explained applied in practice. So we have the horizon line at the viewer's eye level, we have a vanishing point where parallel lines converge, and the distance or the size of certain things appear smaller as they recede in space. Just one quick note, most vanishing points you will use in 1-point and 2-point perspective sit on the horizon line because they represent horizontal directions in space. So the next time you go to a train station, observe how the rails converge at a vanishing point and actually start looking at everything that is around you, and you will notice that you will start seeing the world around you in a very different perspective. One-point perspective has only one vanishing point, and one of the faces of the object is parallel to the viewer. It's best used for drawing roads, railway tracks, and in any case that a face of an object is parallel to the viewer. I'm going to use this cube to make it a little bit more visual. So in one-point perspective, we have the horizon line at my eye level and a vanishing point that is in the distance. So if the cube is right on top of the horizon line and the vanishing point, that's what I see. I just see this face of the cube. And in one-point perspective, this face of the cube is always parallel to you, okay? If I move it to the side and it's still parallel to you, this face is still parallel to you, but I now see the right-hand side of the cube. If I move it to this side, I now see this side of the cube, okay? But it is still on my horizon line. If it is below, and this face is still parallel to you, I also see the top of it. If it is above, well, you can't see it really, but if it is above the horizon line, I see the bottom of it, the bottom of the object. Two-point perspective has two vanishing points, and what's facing the viewer, it's not a face of the object, but one of the edges of it. It's very common when you are drawing buildings from a corner, for example, and it often feels more natural and more dynamic than the one-point perspective. On the two-point perspective, what is facing you? It's not this face of the cube, but this edge of it. Okay, so now you always see two faces of the object, and what's parallel to you, it's this edge of the cube. So it's going to be always like this. See the top of the object, you see the bottom of it. Now I'm going to share with you a very simple exercise that you can make to practice your perspective skills. I did it a lot when I first learned it, and it helped me to understand the logic behind it. And it doesn't have to be super rigorous, it's just for you to start practicing. So grab pencil and paper and draw with me. So you just have to start by drawing an horizon line and a vanishing point. Then draw something that is parallel to you, like a square, and then connect these dots to the vanishing point. And as I said, it doesn't have to be super rigorous. You don't need to use a ruler to make this. You can make it very small size. Then you just have to close these lines here and here you have your cube. You just have to repeat the process, place the square in different places, and you will start understanding and seeing things in space. So by doing this very quick exercise, you already start understanding the logic, which dots you have to connect to the vanishing point, and how the object is, if it is above the horizon line, on top of it, or below it, which sides of the object or the cube do you see. Now for the 2-point perspective is similar. You start by drawing the horizon line, you mark 2 vanishing points, and then you draw just a line. Instead of a square, you just draw a line, and then you connect these points to the vanishing points. Then you close the lines here, and then this dot connects to this vanishing point, and this one to this vanishing point. And here we have our object. Perspective is a tool, not a requirement. Some artists use it very accurately, and other artists use it more loosely or deliberately ignore it. But to break the rules, you first have to know them. Picasso once said, "Learn the rules like a pro, and so you can break them like an artist." And what he meant by this was that true rebellion requires mastery first. Otherwise, breaking the rules will look like a mistake and not an intentional choice. So you first have to understand how perspective works. And don't worry if it feels very confusing at first. Every artist, including myself, struggled with it in the beginning. But the more you practice and the more you observe, the easier it will become. So be patient, keep practicing, and I'm sure that with time you will see real improvements in your drawings. I hope you enjoyed this drawing lesson. If so, click the like button below. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you struggle with perspective, if you learned something with this video, or if you have any other doubts about this topic. And of course, if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe my channel so you don't miss content like this and other videos related with art history and drawing. Remember, Anabela's Drawing is your art education channel on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.